On this episode, I have the lovely Monica, my girlfriend. Would you like to introduce yourself, Monica?
I mean, I think you kind of introduced me already, but hi.
There we go. Today, we're going to be talking about something that maybe is relevant to a lot of you who are under quarantine, and that's dealing with a long distance relationship. So, I know some of my friends are in relationships that have been forced to go long distance, and I'm sure that you have friends that are in relationships, actually, that probably were long distance to begin with, but that can maybe learn from our experience. Monica has been my girlfriend for roughly 3 years now, and I think we have a lot of wisdom to share on this topic. So, why don't you start us off? I have some of your notes up here just in case you forget, but is there anything you wanted to talk about first, Monica?
I mean, like right off the bat, I think it's kind of important. I mean, with this whole quarantine thing and this whole social distancing thing, that obviously we're not able to go see our significant others as much as we would want to. And a lot of us are kind of in a situation where we haven't been before, where you're kind of coming up with a new a newfound long distance relationship that you weren't prepared to deal with. So, I mean, me and you, I mean, we've been together for a while. I mean, for our first year, you were living in Irvine, which was like 20 minutes away from me, and then after you graduated, that was like a whole 2.5 hour to 3 hour drive. And there's a lot of tricky stuff going on. Um, I think one of the stuff that we did have to tackle was intimacy, staying intimate with each other, given the distance and the time between that we saw each other. That was a challenge that we definitely had to work on and that we're still working on. Do you
Yeah.
agree?
So yeah, I was really close to her for the majority of our first year together, um, and that helps a lot when you're able to see someone, obviously. And later, that turned into a summer spent apart, and that was tough, especially since this is my first like real relationship here, and I had a lot of trouble adapting to it because I'm somebody who likes to caress, hug, be physical with someone. That's my um, best and most comfortable form of intimacy. So, um, not being able to do that is tough. It doesn't matter how many times you FaceTime someone. It doesn't matter how many times you. I don't even care if you have like a VR headset and you're able to like see a 3D model. It's not the same thing as just being in person and I don't know, cuddling. Let's say that actually I've read releases a positive endorphin. I forgot what it is. I think it's not serotonin.
It's
It's
not pheromones.
not pheromones. What's that one? Like, not serotonin, like the other one. It's like the most dopamine. I think it's dopamine. So,
That's pretty dope.
yeah, it's dope. So it releases dopamine, I think, and it just reinforces that, you know, I'm pretty sure biologically it's to reinforce that you stay with your partner and raise a kid because we don't have a million kids and just raise them willy nilly. We usually have like one or two kids and raise them really well. So anyway,
I think
um,
like staying away from like the whole sciencey part of it, so we don't confuse everyone, including me.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So
But
to make a long story short, I think someone like me like needs it, and it's hard to overcome that.
I think that was one of the struggles because I know that you're a person who really values quality time and especially physical touch. So obviously, with the distance, I'm not able to be there. Um, I think the thing that really did cause us problems in the beginning was that I'm different, and for me, it's just kind of as long as you're talking to me and that there's constant communication, um, I'm fine. So it was really hard to wrap around why you were feeling sort of neglected and why you weren't feeling loved in a way that you wanted to feel loved because I couldn't relate. So, I mean, trying to find ways to work around that was definitely a challenge, especially because, again, distance. I mean, I wouldn't be able to see you as often and it's not like I can just like transport over there and like touch you whenever you want to be touched.
Yeah.
Um,
So on that note, you have to come up with alternatives, and for others, they discover sides of themselves that they didn't know, or something revolutionary happens. They find out they can be intimate in another way. For some people, it's like, oh well, we have this hobby together, or for some people, they, I don't know, exchange mail, whatever it may be. I think you just have to get creative. Monica was talking about quality time earlier. I think one of my hobbies, obviously, is playing video games, and I really enjoy when Monica plays video games with me, where she isn't like raging at me, and that happens because, okay, well, let's say I'm too good at this game, and she can tell I'm going easy. Yeah, that's not a fun experience for anyone. I'm not having fun because I'm not trying. She's not having fun because she knows I'm not trying, and she's still like struggling, right? So to find a game where we're on equal footing, to find a game where we're both having fun at the very least, or even a cooperative game, those are some ways to work around having quality time spent together.
yeah, I mean, also, I think piggybacking off of what you were saying. Oh
By
my
the way,
gosh, I'm like,
continue. I'm going to mute myself and answer this phone call from my mom. 1 second.
okay. Well, I mean, piggybacking off what Q was saying, finding different ways to stay intimate and show your love for one another, um, aside from doing video games. What I do, because one of my love languages is giving gifts, I would constantly, send Postmates to Kia's house, or I would send him random gifts through Amazon and have them delivered with cute little messages. And I think that really helped us because he really realized that I was, whether or not we were away from each other, I was still thinking about him and I was taking the time to, really find something that would make him feel better about, his day or being away from me. So those were some ways that we tackled on the whole uh, long distance intimacy thing. Um, he actually bought me Pokemon Sword so
Yee.
we can play together. So that was
And
kind of a
Smash
two
Bros.
bird. And Smash Bros. I don't like that game. Sorry,
Yep.
because I keep losing. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of reciprocating both the gift giving and quality time ideas. I mean, we play Fortnite, not good. Um, we
I'm
recently
not good
started
either.
playing. Okay, well, it's not now's not the time to be humble. But um, we also got into playing backgammon. So these are really good things, and we found that this did bring us together, and it did help us with our collaboration skills and our teamwork skills. And when we saw each other in person, however long that may be, I found that we really appreciated the time spent together way more than we did when we saw each other daily for like hours on end.
Yeah. That's one thing that long distance relationships do. It's like when you do see each other, it's a really positive experience, and it makes spending that time more special. It's more memorable. It becomes different from just well, like let's say you and your partner live together. You're not gonna go out on dates every night, right? So this makes it so that every time you see each other, it's basically a date. You have to come up with some sort of date idea, or you could chill. But usually, like you're inclined to make something special out of it if you're really able to see that person. Um, so in one way, it makes spending that time with each other more valuable. Now, there is obviously a nicer middle ground where you see each other often. Maybe you can't see each other every day, but you see each other often enough that you're flexible with whether this has to be like a special, some sort of special occasion, or if you can, not like guilt-free chilling out. I guess that's the way I want to put it.
Well, I
So
mean,
yeah,
I guess adding on to that, like there's been days where we plan for our anniversaries when we used to see each other all the time. I mean, our last resort would be just going home and watching TV after we did whatever we did. And I've come to realize that with this whole distance thing, we ended up doing a lot more meaningful activities. And even though we run out of, like, let's say we're watching a movie and we have like nothing to do, um, we do tend to spend a lot more quality time. Both of us are off the phone. Both of us are really listening to each other, and we're just having really great conversations. And um, it's ironic, but I think the distance really did bring us closer, as corny as that sounds.
Yeah, that's definitely corny. But it is true in that, yeah, if we were spending a lot of time together, I wonder how much of that would be me playing a video game, her watching some TV show, me texting someone, her on her phone on Twitter, whatever it may be.
Taking naps.
Huh? Making
Taking
maps?
taking naps.
Taking naps, exactly. So, yeah, I want to actually use this to transition into a different topic that I think is important: time management. Now, I have a story about a friend who told me that she's fresh in a relationship, and her boyfriend would rather like play video games than, I don't know, watch a movie with her. We've all been guilty of this, guys. Like, at one point we're like, okay, she just wants to watch some chick flick. Do I really want to watch this, or do I want to get on Fortnite with the boys? You know what I'm saying? So there's definitely a time to play Fortnite, and there's a time to watch a movie with your girlfriend, even if you don't love it. If you love her, I think that's a good reason to watch that movie. It's something for you guys to talk about. It's something for you guys to spend time both doing. I don't know if you FaceTime when you're watching movies. I usually do. If you're able to FaceTime and see their reaction while they're watching a movie, it's even better. And look, stuff like Fortnite is an example, right? It could be, I want to spend my alone time. It's like you should have the time management skills to manage having your alone time and spending time with your significant other. So in the case of this boyfriend who'd rather play video games, it's a matter of simply playing video games, maybe while the significant other is busy, or after you guys have spent time already, and reprioritizing your significant other to come before that other urge, like to be alone and to play video games. And it's okay to sometimes prioritize one over the other, but when you usually pull one in excess, the other is going to feel like neglected.
I mean, I think we did have this issue, you know, that we kind of had to overcome and that we're still sort of dealing with, but we're getting better. Um, a lot of the times, we've been in long distance for quite some time, so we would FaceTime constantly. And something Kia told me was that, we're FaceTiming all the time. You can't expect me to give you your full attention. I can't be listening to all the stuff that you're saying. Like, I have other stuff to do. And he would be ignoring some of the stuff that I was saying. And for me, it felt like, well, you can't really be using the whole we're FaceTiming all the time to like ignore what I'm saying. And what we sort of compromised was that, there was a set time where I could expect his full attention and him to be listening to everything I was saying. So that was towards the morning and towards the evening when he got all of his stuff done. And then during the day and the afternoon, while he's working on his other stuff, or he's working out, or he's spending time with the family, even if I'm on FaceTime with him, he has other priorities during that time. So if he misses something, that's forgivable. If he misses something during our quality time calls, like what's the deal with that? So I think just setting, certain time where, you have my full attention. I'm here to listen to you. I'm here to work things out with you. That really did help with the whole, being on Fortnite with the boys thing while I'm talking.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about figuring out. Well, obviously, at the root of all this is communication, and we'll get to that. But figuring out what your partner expects of you and seeing if you can meet those expectations with what schedule or what load you have. So if Monica says, I expect this, I have to meet that expectation or lower that expectation. You can't ignore it. That is only going to lead to fights, in my opinion. So if she says, I want your attention on FaceTime, and I know I can't give my attention all day. Uh, then I say, okay, morning and nighttime work for me, and in the middle, if I'm busy, I'm busy. Like, that is so reasonable, and it works out, and I would say I'm satisfied with that, and I think you are too.
Would you mind if, like, you know how, like, just kind of stemming into a different topic, or do you want to like continue this one on and finish it off?
Whatever you want.
Well, I think that's also another thing, kind of going into having fights and arguments in long distance relationships. I think we have had our bouts, are quite a number of bouts. But I think one of the things that I was really happy that we figured out together was what you said earlier about not ignoring the expectations, but sort of tackling them head on or adjusting them and compromising so that way both parties, sort of have an agreement. Um, Arguing is never fun, but arguing is extra not fun over a long distance because you can't see each other. Oftentimes it's through text and it's just not the same.
Don't argue over
And
text. Just don't do it.
yeah, but I mean, sometimes you just have to. So if you do, I think how you were telling me earlier to try to use calm tones and limiting passive aggression, because I've had to work around that. Um, but yeah, like I think that when we were arguing, a lot of the times I felt like you had one point of view and I had another, and both of us kind of had the attitude where it's like, oh, well, you need to see it my way. You need to see it my way. And we ignore the other person's side and we just expect them to sort of agree with one topic and then just have it go on for the rest of the time and expect smooth sailing. But the reality of it is that both people want to be heard. So the important thing is that, you address why someone feels that way and how you would do what you would do to limit that or to alleviate that or do something. Because if you're just saying, oh, well, that's not what's going on, or this isn't what's going on, or you got it all wrong, it's not going to help.
Yeah, you need to listen to what the other person is saying. There's some British expression that I'm going to botch, but it's like if you want to appear wiser, say less. Or like if you want to become better, say less. But the
Are you thinking
idea...
about less is more?
No, it's a little different, but the same principle. Uh, you know what you think, and as long as you're a good communicator, chances are you've gotten your message across. And it's good to double check whether that's true or not, but listening is your real job when there's a disagreement. Because if you fully understand the other side, and then that's the solution. You obviously understand your side because it's your perspective. But if you can fully understand your significant other's perspective, then there should be no discrepancy. And if if that is true of the other person, then you should be able to resolve what's going on, regardless of whether you have different perspectives or not. There is always a compromise, if not a solution that pleases both equally. So, and that's kind of the definition of compromise. But anyway,
I think actually what was something like that was a really good idea of yours was when we were arguing, we set up rules of how we argue. So recently, he was saying we're not going to be bringing up past situations that were covered. So if we argued in the past about something and we already covered it and we got over it and we worked through it, there was no reason to bring it up again. Because if you bring it up again, that means you didn't really cover it the first time. I think the other one that you were talking about was avoiding bringing up personal details and flaws into arguments as sort
I
of...
just wrote that quote. If you see it on stream, don't fight the person, fight the issue.
Mm-hmm. There were some times where when we would argue, you would bring up personal points to try to strengthen your argument. And, when I would tell you that was inappropriate, um, at the time, everybody's angry, so you're not seeing very clearly, but afterwards you kind of understand, like, oh yeah, that was like a sensitive topic. I shouldn't have said that. So I think just establishing like main points of what you can say and what you can't say during arguments really helps kind of get to the point of what it is you're arguing about and how we're going to get out of this argument in
Yeah.
one piece.
And there are rules when you go in a boxing ring, and these are literally people beating each other up. But even they won't give a blow to the head. So similarly, you don't want to give a blow to the head to your partner. You need to set some ground rules. You can't, I don't know, let's say, you know what, they have a fat mole on their stomach and they don't want to talk about it. You shouldn't be bringing up that fat mole if the significant other doesn't want to talk about it.
That was such an unattractive
Huh?
example. That was such an unattractive
I don't
example.
know. They got hit. Their relative got hit by a train, and they're triggered by trains. Let's not bring up
Yeah.
train. Stuff like that. So that can go a long way
Hmm.
in improving your communication during an argument.
And
And
I think,
also, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
It improves your communication during an argument, and it prevents feelings from getting hurt.
Hmm. And um, this isn't necessarily during arguments, but a good way to sort of prevent arguments is understanding when your partner wants to vent about their day or when their partner wants actual advice. Because sometimes, when you're having a rough day, you're saying, like, oh, I'm having this problem, I'm having this problem, I'm having this problem. Like, the first thing you kind of want to do is just kind of dish out everything that's been on your head, everything that's been on your mind the whole day, because you want to share these things with your partner because your partner should be the person who you would want to go to in good times and bad times.
Yep.
And I think the harder thing about having a partner is that obviously if you have a partner who cares a lot about you, they want you to solve that problem and they want to help you with whatever problem you have. And that does cause conflict because one person is like, I just want to talk about what's going on. And the other person is like, well, I see a solution. I want to help. So I think establishing certain languages where I want your advice, I'm welcome to receive advice, or hey, I just want to vent right now. Can you not talk?
Yeah. Exactly. And if your expectations aren't being met, yeah, you have to communicate your expectations, like she said. It's your duty, if you have expectations, to communicate them. Now, there is obviously the case where you've said, hey, I'm just venting, like, stop giving me advice, and the other person's giving advice. That's a whole other topic. But usually that's kind of obvious. We're tackling the nuance here. I think that point should hit home with some people, that as if you expect something, just communicate it. Just say it. Oh, when like Monica was saying earlier, when I'm on FaceTime, I expect your full attention. It's like, that's an expectation. Now I know it, and now I need to see how I can meet it. But there are so many cases where people don't communicate their expectations. They still feel entitled to them, and they don't see the fault in not making it clear, like, oh, you should have known that. Like, I really think that's a no-no. Like, that phrase, like, you should know what you did wrong, you should know that, like, you should already know, like, obviously if you're saying that, there's communication issues. Like, that's what you're really saying. That
I
means
think
go ahead.
I don't think it's so much of a communication issue. I think it's just men and women think differently. I think men are a little bit more
Well,
straightforward. They
yeah,
want
but
to.
there are also miscommunications in male-male relationships and female-female relationships.
Okay, well, I think for the most part, in general, heterosexual relationships, is that okay?
Yeah.
Can we agree on that? I think women tend to feel like, oh, like he should know, like he should tell by the sound of my voice, or he should know by the way I'm saying something. He should know by how I'm acting, because women pick up a lot of these subtle nuances, and men are a little bit more straightforward with how they think, and they like when women are direct, because a lot of the time they're oblivious to, subtle changes that we feel, and we feel like it's so obvious because it's like, oh, I don't usually act like that, but for the most part it kind of slips their heads. So I think just giving them the direction where it's like, hey, like, I'm not the same person, I'm not feeling the same right now, like, there's a shift, Mercury is in retrograde, I don't know,
Okay.
but like, helping out your partner understand how you're feeling is going to do so much better for problem resolving. They're going to understand, hey, I need to step in, I need to help something. And, it benefits both parties at the end of the day by communicating how you feel, because there's been a lot of times where I expected you to pick up on something and you didn't. So I just be sitting down angry, waiting for you to pick up on it, and you never do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so it's like that old boomer comic where it's like the man is an
okay,
ape.
well, I'm not a boomer,
No, I'm
but
just saying, like, it's like the man is an ape, and the the ape isn't gonna pick up on these things, and sometimes it's the other way around. But the point, ultimately, is that there will be miscommunications where you think one thing and he thinks, or you think one thing and the other person thinks completely differently. So just try to catch on those early if you can, and even if it's late, it's never too late to communicate. It's never too late to say how you feel, what your expectation is, and that usually resolves a lot of miscommunication. I think we have touched on this quite a bit. I want to talk about what to expect in a long distance relationship, and we have touched on some of these points obviously already, but I want to go into detail about some of the things that you might not know. What do you imagine when you imagine long distance relationship, Monica? Like at the surface level, when you think of it, what is one of the first things that comes to mind?
I mean, when we were talking about doing a long distance thing, the first thing I imagined was not seeing you for a while.
Yeah.
So, how would I, quote unquote, see you and maintain like the sameness that we had when we were in person, so that way we could keep the relationship healthy and normal?
Yeah, and I think that's such a good and simple way of putting it. Long distance relationship means not seeing your partner for a while. That's as simple as that. And you need to learn how to deal with it. What else is obvious when you think of a long distance relationship? I don't know, phone calls, FaceTime, communicating over the web, over the phone, something like that. Like you're not going to be, I guess you could send mail, but point is your main communication is going to be texting and calling these days, right? You're going to be video calling, you're going to be texting. So now I want to get into the what to expect. It's like, now you're entering video chatting and texting. So earlier I said never argue over text. Why? There's no tone over text. And especially if you're not good at picking up nuance and subtleties, you're not going to pick up sarcasm. You're not going to pick up areas in which one thing is intended to emote and it's just not reciprocated from the other end. So what that ultimately means is if you're texting, there's a much higher chance for miscommunication than video chatting. And even on video chatting, I think there's a higher chance of miscommunication than speaking in person. When you're video chatting, sometimes your gestures are out of frame. Your body language isn't as obvious as in person. There's obviously the connection issues that's going to cause delays in just talking. But I think that's kind of something you don't expect. It's that your communication will be poorer, most likely, even though it seems like you're just a text or a call away. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, moving aside from the whole arguing thing, because I think we covered a lot of cons, I think another thing to expect is that it doesn't have to be completely different. I think, small things, small gestures, such as continuously saying, reminding the person, hey, I love you, or saying good morning and good night every night. I think those small things really go a long way, because when you're far away from someone, it's really hard to feel like, are they thinking about me? Are they, do they still like me, especially early on in a relationship? Um, I think just doing those little reminders to reassure the person you're with does go a long way. And I think you should, when you're getting into a long distance relationship, you should expect to really up your texting game. I mean, if you're not a good texter, I don't recommend being in a long distance relationship,
Oh,
because
ho, ho.
it's not, I mean, you shouldn't be using that as an excuse anymore, because, if you're with someone you care about, you can't say like, "Oh yeah, I'm just a really bad texter." It's like, no, you should be working on your communication to show that you care.
Yeah, I know some people who don't respond to texts for weeks. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
that person would need to adjust to be in a
mhm.
long distance relationship, I think. And that's a very good point. And one thing that you mentioned that I liked is what happens when you're early on in the relationship and it becomes long distance. Yeah, that's tough. That idea that, oh, are they still thinking about me? Do they still like me? Um, there's
Do you still
also,
like me?
yes, I still like you. Now, the thing I think is interesting here is sometimes you have bad relationships, like toxic relationships, where one is like dependent on the other. I think long distance relationships can unravel that very quickly. You'll have one guy who's off, one person off doing their own thing, and the other constantly demanding the attention, right? So there can be that issue that can be brought to light very clearly because of a long distance relationship. Um, yeah, do you want
I
to
I
comment on
think
that?
I think one of the good things that has come out of, being long distance was, when you were here, I would go to your apartment after school every day, spend hours on end with you and your roommates, and, go back home. And a lot of the times I would just, that was just my plan. Like, oh, after school, I'm just going to go to your place. And after you left, I kind of realized, like, oh, well, I spent a lot of time with you. I sort of neglected hanging out with my friends. I sort of, spent a lot of time hanging out with you, that I didn't focus so much on school as much as I would have hoped to. And I do think that long distance relationship has improved my time management skills, because I've come to realize, like, oh, like, I have a set day where I'm going to spend a lot of time with you, and I can focus all of my other things on something else, because I don't have to, I'm not hanging out with you.
Yeah, and we did touch on time management before, but that is a good thing that you learn proper time management because of a long distance relationship. And this is something that it won't go away if you break up with that person or if you go into a regular relationship. Uh, then it becomes ingrained in you. Then you still have those time management skills and you are able to use them in your daily life. So that's definitely a positive. Now, I
Hmm.
used the word normal relationship just there, and I thought about it for a second, and I'm okay with that. I do think long distance relationships are not the norm, and that's not something you should be afraid to say. Obviously, you're supposed to be spending physical time with someone, not just virtual time or sending letters and corresponding through other ways. Um, so, the goal of a long distance relationship should be to transform it into a normal relationship. That's a topic that I've heard other people talk about, other streamers even. And I agree with it. I think if you're entering a long distance relationship not knowing if it'll ever be regular, or your one person wants to stay this way for a long time, or again, it's about expectations. But ultimately, you need to have both parties agree that the destination is to be in a normal relationship, or you need to see a future with this person, or you need to want to live with this person, something like that. And if
I
that, yeah, go ahead.
I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was pretty much done. Basically, if that's not
Okay.
the goal, then you shouldn't be in a long distance relationship.
Yeah, what I really liked about what you were saying was being in a long distance relationship, you should have an end goal. This whole long distance relationship isn't really a time for exploration. It's not the time to get to know people. I think objectively, the time to get to know someone and to see if you really like them, if you really want to be with them, is to do that in person. And I think that when you start off a relationship in person and then you move into long distance, it's a lot more successful rather than starting it long distance and then hopefully meeting up with that person.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. I mean, I'll let you finish, but
I mean, I mean, during my time with you, I had to, establish whether or not I liked you, whether or not I wanted to be with you for a long time, whether or not, because I think there's a lot of temptation in long distance relationships. You feel, sometimes you feel like, oh, like, do I even like this person that much? Like, should I just go into another relationship because it's easier? Like, I can see that person more often. It really tells you how much you care about that person and how much effort you're actually willing to put into the relationship. And, luckily for both of us, um, we both agreed like it was worth staying in this thing because we both had the same goal in mind and we still both have the same goal in mind of, you know, making it to the long run, staying together for a while. It doesn't have to be like, marriage or anything, but as long as you and your partner both agree, like, oh yeah, like
there's something
during this
beyond it.
yeah, because right now it's not the time to take things day by day and see how they go because that just
No.
ends in that just doesn't work
The
out.
thing is, what you were talking about earlier, I don't know anybody who's started a relationship long distance and then moved and been with that person. Actually, you know what? My college my college roommate's old roommate did this, actually. And I think it worked out for them. They got married or whatever. But what I wanted to say is I wouldn't recommend it. It's not just about am I getting catfished or not. There are ways to figure out if you're not. You do a FaceTime call, you do a Snapchat video,
Well, I
or
didn't I didn't mean like meeting people online, but like for example, some people, especially high schoolers who are seniors and like, they find out they like the person, but they're going to like colleges in different states and they want to make things work out. Like I'm not saying like you're meeting this person for the first time. I'm saying like you start off knowing each other and then you get into a new relationship. Like these
yeah.
high schoolers who are like, "Oh, I'm going to USC and I'm going to like Harvard." It's like totally different places. And they're like, "Oh, we can still date."
Yeah, now's not the time to test the waters. Fun fact, every high school relationship that's stretched into college has failed that I know of. So you may have a story that says
Uh,
otherwise, but
I think they're just not common.
well, yeah,
I mean,
that too.
I have a problem with putting down relationships because I know, growing up, you don't want to hear like your relationship isn't gonna last, like blah blah blah. Like that just doesn't help. It just adds on to the stress.
I mean,
But
I'm just stating what I know from what examples that I know
oh,
of.
I'm not saying I disagree,
Oh, okay.
but I mean, I think just refraining from telling people like, oh, this isn't gonna work out. This isn't
Yeah,
gonna work
no,
out. It
you
just
don't want to be
doesn't.
negative. It's up to that person whether they want to see what's written on the
Mhm,
walls or not, you know?
mhm. Because I
So
think that's kind of like a boomer mentality, saying like
everyone's going to
these things
tell
aren't
the
gonna
kids in
last.
high school, like, oh, you're not going to marry her. So what's the point? Like, just have your fun. Like, no, it's not even about that. It's
That's
just,
not the right attitude. It's just kind of, I think, a more mindful attitude is saying you should be prepared if this happens. So that way you're not setting absolutes.
yeah. And I imagine if you are in a relationship like that, you're hearing this all the time. So that's not great either. I kind of forgot what point I was making. I think it was, yeah, yeah. Okay, so if you're starting out long distance, there may be things that you physically don't like about the person that you just aren't aware of yet. It's not about, oh, she's fatter than she looks on camera, or he's shorter. It's more deep than that. Even though we're talking about something physical, you might not have chemistry. I think that's such an important thing to have in a relationship. If you don't have chemistry with someone, you're not going to be inclined to stay with that person. And there are exceptions where you have just this unique bond with someone and you say, I don't care if it's long distance or not. I want this chance to flourish with this person. Fine. But you're going to have to accept that you may not be chemically, sexually compatible. And to lack that, I can't imagine a relationship without that chemistry. So it's
I
a
think
tough one.
I think it's like not even sexual. I think it's just like the small details. Like if you're with someone and then you hold hands for the first time, you think like, oh, his hands are a little bit clammy. It's mildly irritating. Or oh,
That's funny.
I don't like the way he burps in my direction.
Do you like
I
the way I
don't
burp in your
I don't
direction?
like the way you burp in my direction
It's
and then blow
okay.
it in my
Stop doing
face.
that.
Yeah. Um,
Ugh.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
Um, or you just don't like the way they nap. I mean, I for sure don't like how you're really warm. So I
I'm a
like to
warm
cling to the
lad.
wall. And then you don't like how I don't properly sleep on a pillow.
No, she uses just the corner of the pillow, and it makes no sense. And she also turns up the AC to freezing in her car, and I hate it.
Yeah, so I mean, there's like these little things where, you should get to know and you should, sort of ask yourself, is it worth it? These are small things. And, if you're in a long distance, you're like, oh, yeah, they're not that big. They're like, why do I care?
But then it becomes
These,
every day.
they're continuous. And, you know, when you're in person, you really see, like, oh, yeah, like I'm used to it. I can get used to this. But when you're just introduced to this whole new person who is like the total opposite of you physically, it's a disaster.
Right. So yeah, just wanted to flesh that particular point out. I'm sure it's kind of a rare example, so I don't
Or
want to
even diets. Imagine like
diets.
finding out
Oh
someone's
yeah,
vegan.
yeah. Anyway, so um, just it's kind of a specific case. I don't think that's the general wisdom
Hmm.
that we want to share. I think I want to move on to uh, the next topic, and that's monotony, boredom, how to spice things up. I talked about finding a hobby to do with your significant other. I think that's great. Finding a game that you are both at equal footing at. It doesn't have to be a video game. Backgammon is what Monica and I play. That's an old, you know, board game that you can play online. That'd be great. Just undertaking something new together, such as you learn this recipe together, you both cook it at the same time, you both eat it at the same time. It's gonna improve your cooking skills, which is always great, and it's going to feel like I just cooked this for her, and she's going. I just cooked this for the other person. The other person just cooked this for me. It's a nice thing to share. So whatever it may be, whatever hobby you partake, whatever game you play, whatever thing that you do to try to break the monotony counts. That effort that you put in to try to do something special or something different counts. And it's okay if it doesn't work out. If Monica hates Smash Bros, that's fine. I don't have to say, no, we have to play Smash Bros, even if I really like it. You move on to the next thing until you find something that you both enjoy. That's the most important thing.
I
Uh,
think touching on that though, moving on to the next thing if someone else doesn't like it, I think that before you move on, you have to make sure that the other person is actually giving it a try. Because I think
yes.
it's one thing to say, like, oh, I don't like doing this, or it's one thing where it's like, oh, I just don't feel like doing it.
Yeah, 100%. You can't expect them to try when it comes to something you really like if you're not trying in something that they really like. So that's a good point.
Hmm. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No. I was pretty much done. I wanted you to take over anyway.
Oh, okay. Am I at top now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Um, I think going on about that one, another thing that it doesn't have to be a hobby if you're not into video games. It doesn't have to be games if you're not into like movies. It doesn't have to be movies, but I think trying to incorporate your partner in your day to day. So I know that Kia has been working on, voice acting and, making himself popular with his TikToks and his streams and his YouTube thing. what I really like is that he tries to include me by saying like, "Oh, hey, like I really like the way you design stuff." So I helped him out. So I feel
Monica designed
included.
this stream overlay. I mentioned that in the past episode, but I'll mention it again. This very overlay, in tune with Joon, that you see on the bottom, the little logo you see at the top, designed by her.
Yeah, so thank you. So, I mean, just these little small things where he says, "Oh, I like the way you do this. Can you do this for me?" Or offering, saying like, "Oh, hey, like I think you could use some help on this blah 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 blah." I think that does keep some normalness into the distance thing because it feels like you guys are working on something together and you guys are being a team and just keeping that, team thing alive is really going to help your relationship.
Agreed. Because you are on a team. That's a really good point. You're both playing for each other. So don't play yourselves by not playing for each other. If you're not ready to be on a team, if you're some arrogant person and you're like, wow, this person is so, uh, like this other person doesn't listen to me and I'm all great and they don't like any of the things I do and they're not interested in any of the things I do. It's time to find someone else. You want a cheerleader. You don't want a you don't want a relationship. If you want a relationship, you need to be ready to compromise. You need to be ready to try things that you haven't tried before. And even if you do find someone that you think you're pretty much compatible with in every way, there are going to be differences. No two people are alike. And if you're dating your twin, then there's a whole other issue there. So,
I I think finding the balance between opposites attract and great minds think alike is really helpful in a relationship where it's like, okay, well, we have these things that contrast, but that's okay. And then we have these things that are similar, and that makes us work out. But you cannot be completely opposite or completely alike because then, like you were saying, it just doesn't work out.
I think if you're completely alike, there'll be more boredom. There'll be more monotony.
It removes
And
the mystery from the
yeah,
person you're with.
yeah. And I'm sure I can be proven wrong, but in general, I think what Monica's saying is true. It's like you want some things that you're different in. You want some things that you think alike. If you have too many differences, you're just going to clash all the time. And there are some toxic relationships where people stay in it and they, bottom line, that's a toxic relationship where you're constantly fighting and constantly arguing. And I don't know, the relationships with no disagreements, no fights, that seems kind of boring. It's not that you want to fight. It's not that you want to disagree, but you want to broaden your perspectives. You want to grow as people. You don't want to stay the same. Like if you're 17 years old and you find another like-minded 17-year-old, you're bound for failure, in my opinion. You're basically both children, and you're going to stay children. So finding someone who will help you grow is great. Finding someone who will broaden your perspective, finding someone that you also have certain things in common with. That is a great point, Monica.
I think just fighting the battles and not each other is really important. So, I mean, if your partner doesn't like, I don't know, like a small thing about yourself, you can choose, whether or not to get over it, or you can choose to say, like, hey, like, this is something that doesn't work for me. So, I mean, I think for the older people who are in more serious relationships, I think there's a big difference between if someone says, I want kids and I don't want to have kids, rather than someone saying, like, I want this for dinner and I don't want that for dinner. I think choosing what
What if I
differences
want the
are,
kids for dinner?
I think we should see other people. But yeah, I think just kind of establishing, like, what are your ground rules? Like, what are your boundaries on what's okay with you and what's not okay with you is really going to help define the success of your long-term relationship.
I think we've
You can pop smile.
I think we've touched on that. Yeah, yeah. I think we've touched on that quite well. I'd like to talk about our final written talking point, at least, And that's okay. You're young, you're in a relationship, maybe you have access to counseling, maybe you don't. What do you do when you're at your wits' end? What do you do when you're at an impasse? You think you're both trying to solve an issue, it won't go away for one reason or the other. And to tie that together, Monica, do you believe in breaks? So
And
go ahead.
of course, I believe in them. We've taken them. Do you?
Yes, but go on.
But I think that this is kind of a hot take, slightly controversial. But I think a lot of people feel like, oh, like a break, you might as well break up. Like, what's the point? I think with us, we've come back together better after a break. Kia and I have both taken breaks and have broken up on and off over the time that we've been together. When we were on breaks, I think it's important to say, like, I still want to be with you. I just want some time off to be by myself and to sort things out because I just feel like, this relationship, I'm not feeling loved properly. I'm not feeling respected, whatever it may be. And just saying, like, I need to reevaluate whether or not I think it's worth staying in. And I need to reevaluate whether or not you're someone I still want to be with. And that's what I communicate breaks to be, a set time where both of you really think about the actions and the efforts and everything about the relationship, but also staying in the relationship for that time. Because,
Exactly. I'll let you finish your thought and then I'll chime in.
okay, I'll wrap it up. But, when you're in a relationship and you take a break, I think it's a lot better than saying, oh, I want to break up. And then when you break up, the other person might be moved on. And then you feel hurt because it's like, oh, well, now you feel betrayed because it's like, oh, was he actually talking to that girl this whole time? Oh, who is this girl? Why is he moving on so fast? And it does cause a lot of hurt. I'm not saying to take breaks to like cling on to someone, but I think it does mediate the, amount of betrayal you would feel by saying, oh, I want to break up and I want to get back together again.
So, I agree with everything you've said. And one thing I wanted to add on top of that is you're going to have breaks where one person is going to be like, oh, I want to see other people during this break. I want to shoot my shot with other people. You need to be emotionally prepared if you're going to accept something like that. Like Monica said, if you're going to be anxious about what was he doing this whole time? Was he texting this girl? Was this person always looking to leave? There's a lot of issues that can come about if you're not on the same page there. If you're not okay with the other partner seeing other people during the break, that's grounds for breaking up, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So don't let your break be one-sided. That's what I wanted to say. Thanks for the retweet. And if you let your break be one-sided, it could do more damage than help. Monica mentioned that going on breaks and coming back has helped our relationship. That's the point. They're not supposed to be breakups. Breakups end relationship. Breaks help relationships.
Well, I mean, I think that's a hot take. I think breaks are just time to think about whether or not you would want to be.
I'm saying if you're going to get back together after a break, it should help your relationship.
Oh, yeah, it does help. I mean, I think, are we allowed to talk about our case, or is that just kind of like on the low key?
What do you mean? No, you can say like, whatever you want. Whatever you want to share.
So, just trying to, make sure you don't like file a lawsuit against me or something.
I'm not going to.
When we took our break, I remember that we were arguing a lot because I was constantly saying how this thing hurts me. I don't like this. I don't like this. And, we were butting heads because I felt like, you have done me wrong. And you sort of refused to see that. And for me, it became to a breaking point where it's like, you know what, if he can't see that he's hurting me after constantly telling him, like, I don't know if I can be with this person because he can't take accountability for what he did. And for you, on the other hand, you felt like, oh, she's a hothead, like she needs to calm down, like I can't be with someone who's angry all the time. And, during that break, I had time to think like, okay, well, am I overreacting or was I right to stand my ground? And I think during that time you had to reevaluate, was I being harsh and, rude? And we
And
came
usually
back.
the answer is it's a bit of both. If you're going on a break and you get back together, it means you've both had some sort of perspective shift. It's rarely, oh, this one person was completely in the wrong and they realized their mistake. It doesn't mean that never happens, but
Mhm.
sometimes it takes a bit of growth from both people in the relationship to come back stronger.
Yeah, so I mean, during that time while we were taking a break, um, we established rules where we wouldn't talk to each other. I mean, except for like keeping up a snap streak or something, but we didn't talk to each other so that way we both have space to think about what just happened. And, we set a certain time period where we would be ready to talk about everything that we thought about.
Yeah, that was that's what worked for us.
Hmm.
Taking breaks might be different for you. Like if you both want to try out other people, want to see other people, like go for it. If you're both okay with it, as long as it's not one-sided. If you're both on
Hmm.
the same page when you start the break, it's okay to not be at the same page at the end of the break. Obviously, maybe one
And I
person
think
says, "Good."
honesty is important too, as well during these breaks. You can't like say one thing and do another, or say, oh, well, you didn't explicitly say I couldn't talk to this one girl. You should be laying out all of your expectations and leave no room for assumptions because, you know, you could use the argument, well, you never said this. That's true, but, if you were thinking about doing it, you should have brought it up and asked.
Yeah, just
Or,
try to over communicate rather than under communicate. That's what I've found helps. If you're going to do something you think is sus, or maybe you don't think it's sus, it never hurts to mention it because
mhm.
if there's a disagreement, you're not dealing with, oh, the past is the past. You're dealing with, okay, I have a choice whether to do this thing or not. Now that's tough in breaks because you're not most likely talking to the other person. So that's again why I said be on the same page beforehand so that you don't
and,
make mistakes afterwards.
and I think for the most part, you know if what you're doing is okay or not, because you would really think, oh, is this person actually going to be okay with this thing? I mean, it's your partner, you know them better, or at least I would hope that you would know them better, so you could get an idea of something that would and wouldn't be okay with them. And if it feels like it's not a good idea, if it feels like it might damage your relationship, if that person knew, or if you told that person you did something, just don't do it if you really care about them.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, you even if you think something should be okay from your perspective, you need to put yourself in your partner's shoes in order to prevent
Hmm.
conflict from happening. Because if you don't, then you're setting yourself up for failure, in my opinion.
And that was just breaks. I mean, we also talked about how we broke up as well, which was actually us, being
It's pretty much
separated,
like a
which is
break.
told. No, I mean, we did break up.
Yes, but it was for like 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah, but I mean, during that time, like, it was different
Yeah.
because I think the main difference between the break was that we were both expecting to be with each other,
Oh, okay.
and we
Yeah.
were both kind of like, we were both sort of mutual. I guess we were both kind of on even grounds. I think the times that we did break up, it was just kind of us both reaching our breaking point
Yeah.
where it's like, you know what, it's not worth being in this anymore. I want to leave. And I think that's, it was unfortunate. Obviously, we got back together. Um, but I think it's important to know that even if you do break up while you're on a long distance relationship, not all hope is lost. I mean, it's still possible to stay, friends. It's still possible to, be formal and not be at each other's throats all the time. Um, I think it's just important to remember that there is a person behind the person that you were in a relationship with. And, there's stuff that you do like about that person. So, you know, just kind of seeing how you feel about that person and overall rather than your partner is important to keep in mind.
Exactly. I think we've touched on a lot here. I think one more thing I want to bring up is the idea of what to do when you can't reach a counselor. In the past, Monica has talked to her friends about it. I've talked to my friends about it. That could be an option for you. Maybe venting
Uh,
to your friends works. For us, it wasn't great. Um, I didn't like her friends' perspectives. She didn't like my friends' perspectives, mostly because they were cheerleaders. Her friends would cheerleader her, my friends would cheerleader me. So it was like you're bolstering your argument without really listening to the other side. So that's kind of where I want to point this. Okay, you don't have counseling. What do you do? It's like learn. Yeah, like it really is a matter of getting creative and figure out how can you understand your significant other better. I think that is a great way of, you don't have a professional. Well, what can you do to understand someone better? They say, um, in order to really understand someone, you have to live with them. You have to travel with them. Well, okay, you're in a long distance relationship. You can't live, you can't travel with them. So how do you get to know someone better? You have to figure out how to do that for yourself. I don't have a clear cut answer. Do you, Monica?
I don't have a clear cut answer, but I think that when you're trying to answer these problems and you don't have a counselor, it shouldn't be focused on what the other person is doing. I think it's also partially understanding what you can do for that person.
That sounds
So,
like a JFK quote. Like, ask not what you can do for you, what your
oh,
country
okay.
can do for you.
I knew it sounded familiar. Oh my
You
gosh.
just like adapted it. You're like, ask not what your partner can do for you, but what you can do for your partner. I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'm
So
gonna
I
put
mean,
that as your quote.
just put JFK.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I think it's important to say like my partner has flaws, but also understanding that you have some flaws too, or at least in the eyes of your partner, you do. Because, you shouldn't be expecting to go into therapy and couples counseling. When you go to couples counseling, you're not going there to be like, oh, can you pick a side on who is right? It's
No, that's definitely
helping,
not the goal there.
yeah, it's trying to figure out both of you how you are as a person and make each other work out. So, yeah, I think before you start getting creative on trying to understand your partner, you should try understanding yourself and your wants and your needs and your
That's a
expectations.
really good point. If you don't know what you want, which is so common, that is probably the most common phrase I've heard in young people relationships. Like, I don't know what I want. Like, I don't know what I want this to be. Like, if you don't know what you want, how can you expect who you're dealing with? Maybe they're not even your partner yet to know what they want. But I guess our audience or the issue we're talking about is people who do know what they want with that other person since they are in a long
Mhm.
distance relationship. But yeah, sort yourself out first. You can't.
And sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. You can't expect the other person to read your mind if you can't even read your own mind.
Hmm. And I like that, something new that you've been doing is casually asking me here and there, like, hey, what are three things that you like about me, and three things that you don't like about me, or three things that you would want me to change?
Feedback.
Yeah, constant feedback. And, it doesn't you don't have to wait till you get into an argument to really sort these things out. I think that, especially when you guys are both calm and in a neutral state, it's the best time to say, like, hey, can you tell me some stuff that's on your mind that you would like me to change? Because when you're in an argument, everything just gets hashed out and nobody's thinking clearly.
And that goes back to what started it all, communication. So I think
Hmm.
we just brought it full circle, haven't we?
It's a circle of life.
Oh boy, we're making profound statements here. Well,
Are we going to get copyrighted?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think I've touched on everything I wanted to talk about. Is there anything you wanted to mention at the end here?
um, I love you.
I love you too.
Hmm.
Now it's on air. Now it's official.
It's official. Okay.
All right. Well, this has been great. Monica, thank you for being on. And don't worry, she'll be on very soon. She'll be on Wednesday, same time, 10:30 a.m. We're gonna have it, Monica and Daria. We're gonna talk about public versus private school. It'll be interesting. And Monica went to a public school her whole life. I went to a private school and a public college. Daria went to both a private and public elementary through high school, and then actually, I'm not sure what kind of university the one he went to is in France, but I'm pretty sure it's you know what? I don't know. Let's say university in France, and we'll find out the rest on Wednesday. So thank you for watching. If you're still here, our Mr. One viewer that might be Monica.
I don't think that's me.
Okay, great. Well, thank you to my one viewer. Say hi in chat if you're there. And feel free to ask us any questions. I think I forgot to mention that in the stream. I mentioned that in the tweet, but it should be in the title somewhere. In any case, oh, hey, what's up, Denny? Good to hear from you. So you, how much of it did you listen to, Denny? Tell us before we log off. And
Is
actually,
that Dirksy?
Yeah, Dirksy is Denny. I don't think you've seen Monica other than probably through my posts. All right, great. It's not tomorrow. It's on Wednesday. Wednesday. Oh, he's listening to the past 5-10 minutes. Great. Well, actually, Denny, you're in a long distance relationship, aren't you? Or you were at one point, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
He was in a long distance relationship on Wednesday.
Yeah, you were. Okay. So did any of the things that we brought up help you at all? Did you find any common ground, or did you feel like we brought up some good points?
Or stuff that he has done.
Oh yeah. Or do you have anything to add on that matter? But yeah, while we wait for Denny's answer, common grounds. Perfect. Yeah, no. So as you see here, Denny is messaging us, Dirksy, in the chat, and we'd love for anyone else to hit us up in the chat while we're talking, after, before, bring up topics you want to hear us talk about, and actually, you'll get to hear about this public versus private school. Our friend Denny went to the Sorbonne. And he also went to like a public school in LA, and we're gonna flesh that out Wednesday around 10:30. So if you're off of work, we're EU friendly. Denny's in France, Monica. So we'll.
Ooh, what time is it over there?
I'd imagine it's 8:30, so 20:30. But we can double check that after stream. Thanks for chatting with us, Denny. Thanks for being on, Monica. Yeah, it's 8:30. And we'll see you all on Wednesday. Have a great day, Monica. And have a great day, Denny.
Okay, bye.